Hello, friends. Brian Gailey, Klamath Falls News. Welcome to Ask Klamath, presented by Fastbreak. Today, we got a very special guest. It's Colonel Jeff Smith, here, commander of the 173rd Fighter Wing right here at Kingsley Field. Welcome. I'm glad to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
So today, we're actually going to talk a whole lot about Kingsley, the future of Kingsley, and things like that. Questions that people have, want to know, answers to, and Secretary Wilson's visit as well. Guys, if you got questions for Colonel Smith, get those in the comments below. We're going to be asking your questions live here on the show, and somebody's going to get a $25 rewards card from Fastbreak. But before we get all to that, Damien, roll that intro. Hey friends, Brian Gailey, Klamath Falls News. Welcome to Ask Klamath. This is episode 11 of Season 2. We are joined today by Colonel Jeff Smith. He is the commander of the 173rd out at Kingsley Field. Welcome. I'm glad to have you here.
I'm glad to be here.
It's like we just went through that.
I feel like that, yeah.
So Colonel Smith is the commander of the 170. I'm actually going to read the bio that was given to me. I don't want to mess this up. Commander of the 173rd Fighter Wing at Kingsley Field, right here in Klamath Falls. The wing's mission is to train the world's greatest air dominance fighter pilots as the sole source of the United States Air Force F15C pilot training production while deploying mission-ready warfighters. Colonel Smith is the senior officer responsible for organizing, training, and equipping the largest F-15C and D wing in the Air National Guard with 32 assigned aircraft. Is that correct?
It is.
Okay. He exercises oversight and command of an integrated total force wing comprised of 1,000 Air National Guard and active duty airmen, civilians, and state employees. Correct? Okay. Did I miss anything?
No.
All right, because I know there's a lot that you got going on here.
My bio is not the thing to focus on here. We got a lot of good people out there.
Oh, very good. So more information on Colonel Smith can be found on our website at askklamath.com. We've got a link there to a whole bunch of other stuff. So what did I miss? I know there's got to be some stuff in there.
Well, I have a long career. I've been in the Air Force since I was 17 in 1991. So, going back to the Air Force Academy through pilot training, there's a long story here, but you hit what I do on a daily basis.
Awesome.
That's what my bio says.
So, guys, we're going to be taking your questions for Colonel Smith live here on the show. Get those in the comments below. Somebody actually is going to win a payday rewards card loaded with $25 from our friends over at Fastbreak. But with that said, if there's a bunch of questions, we may not be able to get to them all. So if we don't ask your question, I apologize. Please don't take it personal. There are a lot of great things out there. So with all that housekeeping out of the way, you ready for some questions that we got earlier?
I am.
Okay. How did you get started in the Air Force?
Well, when I was playing Little League in Baltimore, and I guess I was 5 years old is what my parents tell me. We were in the middle of playing. I was on third base, and an airplane flew over. And I happened to live within a mile or two of an A-10 guard base, the 175th wing out of Middle River, Maryland. And I looked up at this A-10 while it was flying over, and somebody hit the ball towards me, and they had to yell, "Jeff," for me to pull my head out from the sky and actually look down, grab the ball, and throw the guy out. And from that day, I got in the car, and I told my parents I wanted to be a fighter pilot, and I wanted to join the Air Force. And so I literally put my nose down, kept my nose clean, however you say that. I worked hard my entire, through my entire childhood to get to a spot where I could compete to have a pilot slot, and eventually figured out a way to go to the Air Force Academy in 1991. So I watched Desert Storm happen on TV in the spring of my senior year, and I raised my right hand. And on June 27th, we never forget that first day. June 27th, 1991 is when I raised my right hand at the Air Force Academy and joined. And so 27 years later, here I sit in continuous service since then. It all started with that A-10 flying over, and that's a good guard story, right? We see a lot of people here in town that come up to us, in Fred Meyer, in Albertsons, in a parking lot, and just say, "Hey, how do I get to be a pilot?" And the reason they ask is because they see us fly over, and that's exactly what brought me to the Air Force. many, many years ago.
That's awesome. So it all came from a Little League ball field.
1978, looking at an A-10 flyover. Yep.
Awesome. Very cool. So the commander position is something that doesn't last forever, right?
True.
How long have you been commander now?
About 2.5 years.
About 2.5 years. How long is a typical position held for?
It varies. The active duty, it's typically a 2-year tour. Most of our recent commanders have been about 1.5 years, and we've had longer, but I'm on the way to about a 3 and a little bit tour.
A 3 and a little?
Yeah, it's a little bit longer than average, but that'll be my length.
Okay, so what's next for you after this?
I'm in the middle of figuring that out. We really want to stay here in Klamath Falls. We love it here. We've got family here, and I think
Awesome.
with the community, we have so many partners and people that you know. I mean, you can't go to a grocery store and not know the people behind the checkout counter, and that's something to be said about the Guard and the fact that you grow roots here, and that's part of why we loved it here and stayed here. And so we're hoping to stay here, and like I said, I'm in the hunt. I'm trying to figure it out. I've just put my resume together. My wife's a graphic designer, thank God for her. She helped take my silly words and my awful format and put it into something great so that I can send my resume out and start looking for jobs and the opportunity to stay here and be part of this community.
Well, we're excited to have you stay here. That's for sure.
Well, we'd love to.
So not only you got to live your boyhood dream and become an F15 pilot.
Yep.
And just recently, and we're actually going to talk more about this in just a little bit, but just recently, you got to take the Air Force Secretary, Heather Wilson, up in an F-15. How did that go?
It was spectacular. I was telling you a little bit earlier that Secretary Wilson she was non-committal as to what she wanted to do in the jet. So the night before I asked her, I'm like, ma'am, what do you want to do in the F-15? And she said, I don't know. You show me. You take me for the show. You show me what you've got to show. So we got airborne. She's so busy, and there's so much going on that morning and that evening that we get airborne, and we're on the way to the airspace. And I said, what do you want to do? And she still said, I don't know. Show me what you've got to show. So I asked her if she'd been supersonic, and she said no. And I said, well, we're going to fix that. We're going to check that box today. I asked her if she'd been upside down, and she said no. And I said, okay, we're going to fix that and check that box today. And beyond that, we'll show her some of the airspace. And really, that was one of the things I wanted to show her was how wide, how vast, how big our airspace is, and how uncongested it is, how much capacity there is with respect to nobody else being in there. There's no competition for us to use that airspace, and we're so blessed to have that. And so we got into the airspace, and I took her up to 30,000 feet, and we can go supersonic up there so that we keep the noise levels down for the people on the ground. And I took her up to a little over Mach 1.2, which is 12 miles a minute, 12 times the speed of your car on an average day on the highway. And
just a little faster.
Just a little faster.
Yeah.
And so it's very frustrating. When you fly an F-15 and go to Medford and literally shoot an approach, and you're there in 8 minutes, and then you get in your car to go to Costco, and it's an hour and a half later, it's really frustrating.
You need to put a trunk on an F-15.
It would be so much better. The travel pods don't really hold that much stuff. But so anyway, Secretary Wilson took a little picture of the Mach meter and the 1.2 Mach. We then basically, once we got the airplane slowed down, I got to take her upside down. So once we got the airplane slowed down, we took the airplane on its back and dropped down into the low altitude structure and went down to about 500 feet where we can go. And we're flying around 500 feet, and I'm showing her that, like, hey, here's Wagon Tire there with the sign that says Population 2. And I said, this is our airspace. This is why it's such a blessing. It's so vast and it's not populated. It's a great place to train. And so we're going low level through the airspace, and we hadn't gotten to go straight up on our takeoff because the weather was a little bit overcast that day. And so I asked her if she wanted to do that now that we were in the airspace because the weather was clear in the airspace, and she said yeah. So we went from 550 knots and 500 feet, so we're at about 5,000 feet on the clock for pilots that are out there. And we take the airplane, stand it straight up, which for us is 70 degrees nose high. That's what our rule says. So we go to 70 degrees nose high, and I start going up. And we went from 5,000 feet up to 28,000 feet when I finally started running out of airspeed, and I rolled on our back, and I leveled it out. And she goes, "Are we really at 28,000 feet?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." She goes, "That was so fast. That was really fast." And she's a private pilot. She flies Cessnas and general aviation airplanes, so she was just blown away by what the F-15 could do. So she was grinning ear to ear. I had her look out the side of the jet. When you're going straight up, everybody wants to look straight forward, which is just blue sky because you're looking up. You got to look outside. You see the horizon from the wrong angle. That's the way it's supposed to be done. So she did look outside, and she just had a great time. She said it was absolutely amazing, and she enjoyed it. So I had a great time showing her what the F-15 could do. And as we left the airspace, I gave her the controls and said, "Do you want to fly?" and she flew for probably 50, 70 miles
wow.
as we left the airspace and went towards Crater Lake, which unfortunately the weather sucked in that day. We couldn't show her Crater Lake from an F-15, but she flew us over there, and she was amazed at how easy it was to fly. And how responsive it was.
Very cool. So, great story. Great story. It's awesome to see that she had a multi-purpose visit. We're actually going to talk about that here in just a little bit. But the fact that you got to take her up there and to have a good time, show her a good time in an F-15, that's awesome. So, what with that, in talking about your position as the commander, what would you say is your favorite and least favorite part of your job?
It's not an easy question. And my wife is really my sounding board on so many things. She's a good gauge and a good, I don't know, she keeps me in check. And one of the things she's said as she's observed me go through this command role and through different levels of command is that I experience higher highs and lower lows. And I mean that it's a good thing, but it's also a difficult thing. And so it's gonna answer your question, and that is when we win, when the team wins, when Kingsley wins and the Air Force or the 173rd has a good day and people are proud because we've met our mission, and that's I get to experience that with them. I get to share that pride with them. I get to share that happiness with them, and so that is very, very rewarding. When I can help people, when I can promote people, when people have babies and there's good events in their lives, I get to share in all of that in many cases, and so that's such a good thing as a leader. On the flip side of that, when other people are having a bad day, you share that with them, right? And so when you have 1,050 people that work for you and they have a bad day, you share that with them and you empathize and feel that with them. And so that's the harder part, is when you have a low, you have a low a lot because there's a lot more people that you feel the low with and you share the low with. So it's tremendously rewarding. I sent an email out to the wing today that talked a little bit about it, that just said, when you're leading people, it's truly a gift, and you need to treasure that time. It's not always easy, but it truly is treasured because you're being given a responsibility to help other people and to lead other people and guide other people, and you have to do that to your best of your ability, even if it takes a little bit of a toll. So I love my job. I'm very blessed to have it, and I think that everybody that has a leadership role at any level should treasure and cherish the time that they have, and hopefully they can recognize that when they're in the moment.
Okay, very well. So you had just mentioned there that you have 1,000 people at the base. So is that all active, guard? How's that kind of divided? Because you kind of have both out there.
We do. We have, the numbers vary depending on the week, but about 950 to 1,000 guardsmen. And then we have about 100 active duty airmen and families. And then we have contractors and civilians mixed in. And so 1,050, 1,100, depending on the day, folks out there. And that mix really is somewhat recent. We had the Total Force Association, or Total Force Initiative, the active association, show up in about the 2014 time period. We gained some airplanes, and then we gained the people to support those airplanes so that we could train more pilots for the United States, because we train all active and guard pilots in the F-15 C&D community. And so as we brought in those families, our population, our full-time population grew by that 90 to 100 active duty airmen and families, and that's been a relationship that's gone very well. And I'd say now we're fully integrated. We started in 14 and people trickled in, and now we're in 2018 and we have the whole team set, and small perturbations as people travel in and move to the community and people leave, but mostly it's solidified and things are working well.
Well, thank you. Thank you for answering that.
Yeah.
So how many people, 35 planes, right? How many are in a crew to handle just one plane? It's not just the pilot, right? You got a whole staff of crew and maintenance and all that.
That's a difficult question to answer. We have about 32 jets. There are, I think, communities, there are services that do what you just described, where they have a team of 12 that care and feed for that one airplane. That's not how we do it.
Okay.
So we have our maintenance group that will be assigned. There's a guy or a gal out there who has their name on the side of an airplane, which is cool, and that's called a dedicated crew chief. And so their name's on the side of it, and then they have their assistant dedicated crew chief, and their name's on the side of it, and the other side's a pilot. The crew chiefs typically stay with and work on their airplanes. The pilots, everybody thinks that we fly the one with our name on it, but that's not true at all. We just lease it from the crew chiefs who really own that thing, and mostly we fly whatever is given to us as we step out the door. But the crew chiefs work on their airplane. So for a launch, just to give you a picture, we'll have 2 people on the ground that are launching. I'm in the cockpit, and then you've got a team of about 3 that are at the end of the runway. They're going to help make sure, we call it last check, make sure that I'm not leaking anything, that all my explosives are ready to go before I take off, and that I'm safe to take off. So about 5 people to get me off the ground in that little snapshot in time. And then there's the huge machine behind that that makes sure it's all ready to go, from taking care of the munitions, taking care of the equipment, taking care of the inspections on the airplane before it even came to that flight line. A tremendous amount of things behind the scenes. The gas, the people with the parts, it's just a ton of people working to make sure that those 5 people can get me safely airborne and back on the ground.
How awesome. How awesome is
It
that?
is.
Everybody's
It's
got to
very
work together to make it all happen.
Absolutely.
Guys, we're actually going to take a commercial break here in just a moment. But before we do, now is a great time to ask your questions for Colonel Smith that we will have a little later in the show. We'll be talking about your questions, and somebody is going to walk away with a $25 payday rewards card. So, guys, we'll be right back after these moments.
Fuel, refreshment, convenience, community, rewards. Fastbreak convenience stores with 7 basin locations at Madison Chevron, Homedale Fastbreak, Merrill Mobile, 97 Chevron, McDowell Fuel Good, Washburn Chevron, and Blythe Fuel Good. Fastbreak, convenience, community, service.
Slow down.
Slow down and move over.
And move over. When you see lights,
vests,
Or reflectors.
please give us some room. Slow down and move over.
when you need us.
We've got your back.
Do you have ours?
You got our back?
You got ours?
You got our back?
Please, slow down.
And move over.
You can have your car taken to the shop of your choice. So my friend had her car taken to Excel Auto Body because she heard about their reputation for excellent work. They even gave her a written warranty that's good for as long as she owns that car. So Excel Auto Body is a very smart choice.
Hi, I'm Rorik, owner of Excel Auto Body. No matter if the damage is minor or major, you'll want to choose us now. So if you are ever in an accident, you'll be ready. And remember, it's your choice what body shop you go to. Choose Excel Auto Body. It's your car, our reputation.
Hello, friends. Brian Gailey, Klamath Falls News. Welcome back to Ask Klamath, presented by Fastbreak. Joining us today, Colonel Jeff Smith, the 173rd Wing Commander. Thank you again for being here. I appreciate it very much, and thank you for your service. By the way, you're since '91. You've been serving this country, and I thank you for that. That is awesome.
An honor to serve.
So this section is actually brought to you by CrossFit APE, located at 105 North Spring Street. CrossFit APE offers core strength and a conditioning program built on consistently varied functional movements executed at high intensity. Learn more about CrossFit at crossfitape.blogspot.com. CrossFit APE, evolve your lifestyle. Once again, guys, somebody's also going to get one of these payday rewards cards. So if you got questions for Colonel Smith, get those in the comments below. We're going to actually address those here shortly. But before we do, we've got some other stuff to talk about. And you just gave a story of taking Secretary Wilson up in the aircraft. But that wasn't the only reason she came to town. For people who aren't familiar, I actually got a short snippet of Secretary Wilson's bio here, so that basically she's short of the president. She is in charge, right?
There's one more step between there. That's Secretary of Defense.
Okay.
But yes.
But she's about as high as you get.
She's the highest ranking member of the Air Force.
So it says, according to the Air Force page on her bio, it says Heather Wilson is the 24th Secretary of the Air Force and responsible for the affairs of the Department of the Air Force, including the organizing, training, and equipping and providing of the welfare for 685,000 active duty, Guard, Reserve, and civilian forces, as well as their families. That's a key part there, families. And I was there in the press conference, and she was very adamant about the families and spouses and licensing and reciprocity of those licenses, as she was talking about. She oversees the Air Force's annual budget of more than $138 billion, directs strategy and policy development, risk management, weapons acquisition, technology investments, and it just keeps going on and on and on and on. She does a lot, in other words. So it means something to have her come to town and talk with us. What did she come to town for, and how did that visit go?
Well, it's funny how we actually got her here, if you want to call it that. So Congressman Walden was visiting the base and was asking about our challenges and our opportunities. And in that visit, he said, I served with Secretary Wilson when she was a congresswoman in the 90s. And he said, we worked well together. And so we're standing there, and Congressman Walden's about to leave the base, and he texts her from the parking lot and says, Heather, you need to come see this. And it's a picture, he had taken a picture with his phone of me and him and his staff in front of an F15 with the no slack patch behind us on the hangar. And he texts her that picture and then looks at me and goes, hey, there's a ... She's answering. And literally, while we're standing there in the parking lot outside the operations building, she answers back and says, yes, let's make this happen.
Oh, how cool.
And so he looks at me and says, well, what's good for you? And I said, sir, you tell me when she's coming and we'll figure it out. And so he wanted her to come and see the town. He wanted her to come and see the base. He wanted her to see how much community support we have, and he wanted her to see all the good things that we have going on out there. We have, decades of doing this, decades of fighter training culture. Since 1983, we've been training fighter pilots in some airplane or another. And the airspace that we have, which is so vast that I alluded to earlier with tanker support, we're surrounded by tanker units, and that's unique. The infrastructure, he's seen that too. So we have all these pieces that really are ingredients to a successful future and a successful mission. He wanted her to see that because as the head of the U.S. Air Force, she has the ability to see that and then to go back to her staff and say, hey, what does the future look like for these folks? Do we have them in our plans? And if not, where do they fit? So he wanted her to see that. It magically came together, and the staff did a great job supporting her, and the whole team at Kingsley just did a phenomenal job. And at the end of it, it was a phenomenal visit. We got to show her all of it, and she left with a big smile on her face. Her staff said to me that she didn't really want to leave, and they were wondering if they could keep her here for one more night. And I said, game on, let's keep her. We'll fly her again if she stays. So it was a good visit, and we were very lucky to get her here. We've never had somebody that high ranking in the Air Force show up. So.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive to have the Secretary of the Air Force come to the 173rd Kingsley Field and spend some time here, and then say, "I don't want to go home."
Yeah, it was.
And then say, "I don't want to go home." That's pretty big.
Well, she said it felt more like home to her because she's from I don't remember exactly where she was from, but she said she's from a small town. This type of town resonates for her. It felt like home to her, and so as she was here, she said, I would prefer to live in a town like this over most cities. And so she said, I think she said several times on the record, on camera, she said, any day out of the office for me is a good day. And then she said, and any day out west of the Mississippi and out of the office is an even better day. And so here we are about as far away from D.C. as you can get with her in an F-15 and seeing her airmen, which that was the other thing that her staff talked about. And then it was you could see it in her face. She'd have lunch with our airmen, and so everybody talks about the troops, support the soldiers. They're all in the Army, and yes, the Army Air Corps. We used to be in the Army, but we're called airmen. So she likes to sit with her airmen and just chat, and she doesn't like filters. So I wasn't allowed to be at the table with her when she was having lunch. It was her with our junior enlisted, and then her with our senior enlisted, and then her with our junior officers. And she got to have conversations with them and ask them what they do, what they like about it, what they don't like about it, what things she could fix. And she always had a note taker with her to say, well, let's go back and fix that. Let's fix that. And so she the ability to get away from her office and do that and to meet with people and to see them do and talk about what they do and to see the pride and the heart that people bring to their jobs, I think that's what makes her tick. And so, again, you get her out of the office, she gets to do that. She was smiling, and then being west of the Mississippi, she's definitely smiling, and then we get to take her flying in an F-15. She was really smiling. So it was a great trip.
Very good. Since she has gone back home, gone back to her office, have you had any feedback from her camp on her trip now that she's been able to decompress a little bit?
Absolutely. We've stayed in contact with her staff, some follow-on questions back and things that were brought up in those luncheons and things were brought up in our what she called a town hall in our theater on the base where people asked questions, unfiltered, one-on-one straight to her. They were taking notes, and then they said, hey, we want to follow up on that. And so we field the question, then we figure out where it came from, try to give them more details so that they can go figure out if there's a policy that can change or some procedure that can change to make things better for our folks. So that back and forth has continued and has not stopped, and they were very supportive and helpful throughout the whole visit.
Very well. And so we know, and actually we have a question coming up here in a little bit we're going to address in just a moment, but we know the expected life of the F-15 is coming to an end. I don't know if there's an ETA on that. Maybe you know or not, but we'll get to that in a moment. Did she happen to allude to anything that may happen in the Kingsley's mission after the F-15?
Well, again, there were cameras in front of her several times, and she was put on the spot several times to say, are we getting the F-35? And that kept coming up. She can't commit to those basing decisions. That's not her. In many ways, it's her call. It's her recommendation. She did look at me in my office and say, you know that I have to work with the Secretary of Defense and then the President, and then we need Congress and the appropriators to support. So it's not simple. She's the highest ranking, but there's still bosses, right? We all have bosses. And so no, we don't have anything definitive. She did allude to the fact that we think we'll have some definitive force structure discussions in the next 6 months or so, where we'll be able to lay out what the future looks like. So in the Air Force overall, she's been very clear that we're too small. The unique thing for me as I look back on my career, I'd never heard the term frog in the pot until about 2 years ago. Have you heard it?
They're not.
So
I'm not familiar.
You throw the frog in the pot and the water's at room temperature, and then you gradually turn the temperature of the water up, and the frog at some point it's like, yeah, it's just warm water. It's getting gradually warmer, and at some point the frog says, well, the water's getting hot, which has happened. And so there's this insidious change, right? Well, I joined in 1991, and then what the Chief of Staff of the Air Force talks about and what the Secretary of the Air Force talk about is that in 1991, when we fought that fight in the Gulf with the Desert Storm, we had 134 fighter squadrons that year. We have 55 fighter squadrons right now. And so my career has been the frog in the pot. We started with this large pot of airplanes and people, and over time, we've gotten smaller and smaller and smaller, yet we've been in constant combat since then. There's not been a time that we were not in combat since 1991 between all what I grew up with for combat, which was called Operation Northern Watch and Southern Watch, where we were doing no-fly zone enforcement over Iraq, with Kosovo, and then 9/11 and everything post 9/11. We've never had a day without combat since 1991 when I joined, yet we are now 55 fighter squadrons, almost a third of the size we were back in 1991, with many fewer people, and so that has an impact, right? And so she needs to grow that back up, and she's talking about a growth to 386 operational squadrons, and there's lots of assumptions and rules around that, but 386 operational squadrons, a growth, I want to say, of 7 more fighter squadrons, from 55 now up to 62, and so as we talk about future mission, the one thing that we are repeatedly reminded of is that we are too small, and we absolutely, if we're in a fighter right now, we're going to be in a fighter in the future because they need fighter units. And you can't grow a fighter squadron or a fighter wing overnight. You can't grow that culture. We have infrastructure. We have people that move at the pace of fighter, which is slightly intense. We're slightly intense people. And so culturally...
I couldn't imagine why.
No, never. So, there's so much that you'd have to build back up that you can't do that. You have to take what you have and say, this is a fighter unit. If this airplane transitions and we need to retire it, then there's going to be another fighter behind it. We now just need to figure out what that fighter is and how the timeline works and how we gracefully transition those squadrons over and then grow another 7. So the future looks very bright. I am very optimistic that we will have a future fighter training unit here. It will continue to do the mission that it has done, this wing, this unit. But which airplane is still to be determined, and I don't know that.
Okay. Good to know. I know a lot of people out there like, I want to know, well, are we going to see 35s or 22s?
I want to know too.
But the fact of the matter is we just don't know. There's a lot of process that's happening. We're actually going to touch a little bit more on that, specifically the F-15 and its timeline and how much time we've got till this needs to be happening. But before we do, we're going to actually take a commercial break. We'll be right back.
Fuel, refreshment, convenience, community, rewards. Fastbreak convenience stores with 7 basin locations at Madison Chevron, Homedale Fastbreak, Merrill Mobile, 97 Chevron, McDowell Fuel Good, Washburn Chevron, and Blythe Fuel Good. Fastbreak, convenience, community, service.
Slow down.
Slow down and move over.
And move over. When you see lights,
Vests,
Or reflectors.
Please, give us some room. Slow down and move over.
When you need us,
We've got your back.
Do you have ours?
You got our back?
you got ours?
You got our back?
Please, slow down.
And move over.
You can have your car taken to the shop of your choice. So my friend had her car taken to Excel Auto Body because she heard about their reputation for excellent work. They even gave her a written warranty that's good for as long as she owns that car. So Excel Auto Body is a very smart choice.
Hi, I'm Rourke, owner of Excel Auto Body. No matter if the damage is minor or major, you'll want to choose us now. So if you are ever in an accident, you'll be ready. And remember, it's your choice what body shop you go to. Choose Excel Auto Body. It's your car, our reputation.
Hi, friends. Brian Gailey, Klamath Falls News. Welcome back to Ask Klamath, presented by Fastbreak. We're joined today by Colonel Smith, from the commander of the 173rd Fighter Wing out at Kingsley Field. And this section is actually brought to you by the Klamath County Fairgrounds, our friends over there. They've got a lot going on here, and some of the things they have is with Thanksgiving tomorrow. Can you believe that already?
No.
It's crazy to think. And Christmas is right around the corner. I read like 5 Mondays for Christmas. That's crazy. Lamb's Christmas tree lot is opening this Friday, and they'll be at the fairgrounds for the next couple of weeks. The first weekend of December, they have the Jefferson State Shooting Association's gun show, as well as the Quota Christmas Bazaar. So you're going to want to check those things out. If you want to know more about what the fairgrounds has going on, visit kcfairgrounds.org and see how they can help you with your event. Colonel, we've got some more questions. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So I've visited the base a few times, just a few, and I appreciate that every time. Thank you very much for allowing me to do that. One of the things I hear all the time, every single time, is about the F-15's how dominant it is. It's like 100-0, 100 wins and no losses or something like that.
104-0.
Why is it so dominant?
There's multiple reasons I think the Eagle's been so dominant and successful. First, you have to start with the airplane. McDonnell Douglas, back in the day before Boeing, McDonnell Douglas built and engineered an amazing platform. So they started with a requirement, and the requirement was, I need you to be able to detect people well before they can detect us. I need us to be able to identify them and shoot missiles at them a long, long ways away. And to do that, the engineers said that's impossible. It's going to take a really big radar dish on the front end, and you can't have a fighter that's maneuverable with that big of a radar dish. And they said, well, that's exactly what we want. And so they started with this radar dish, and that's why the airplane is so massive. It's a big airplane, and what we can do with it is unbelievable, really, with the amount of Gs and the angle of attack we can take it to, and what we do when we're dogfighting. It's just absolutely nuts, and a lot of fun, by the way, although it does hurt the neck once in a while. So that's how it started. And so when you go back to 1972 when it first flew, and about 1978 when it's really initial operating and it's ready to go, and it hits the flight line at Langley Air Force Base in the early 80s, and it's this airplane that's more powerful than the other airplanes around it. It can detect people at ranges that nobody else can detect. It has the ability to identify the enemy fighters, and then the ability to carry a bunch of external air-to-air missiles. It's got two motors. That's not a bad thing. It gives a ton of redundancy and safety margin for the airplane. The two vertical tails make it very, very stable and very easy to fly. Like I said, the Secretary was amazed at how easy it was to fly. It's very, very easy to fly and very forgiving to take off and land. It's actually easier than a T-38 that we trained in to take off and land and to fly. And so they just had this amazing engineering to get this airplane that then was so over-engineered. We're well past its expected life, service life, and it continues to go. So that's the airplane side of it. But really, what I think is the most unique part of it is the culture that grew. That we talk about the Eagle drivers. We grow Eagle drivers at Kingsley Field, and so an Eagle driver it's difficult to describe what an Eagle driver is, but I can talk a few things about what the culture is and what I think is unique. And I was really reminded of it the other night chatting with one of our new instructor pilots who was an F-18 guy in the Navy who then went to Kadena Air Base, Japan, flying F-15s. And at the time he was about to leave Kadena to come back to the Navy, we offered him a job, and he came to us. And the other night, I said, hey, why? What made you choose Klamath Falls? Why'd you come to the Eagle? He said, I've been all over the world. I've flown F-18s. Now I've flown F-15s. I've fought with and against all of the other types of American fighters. He said, this community has standards. They hold the standards. You can mix and match the pilots, and they're going to always bring their A game, and they're going to be good at what they do. They're going to be professional. They're going to follow the rules and meet the standards. He said, I don't want to be part of anything else. I want to be held in that high esteem. I want to be that good and recognized and respected for being that good. And truly, when I look back at my career, that has been, it's not ego. I don't believe it's egotistical. It's truly we hold a very high standard. We talk about us as the land of no slack, but even the entire Eagle community is kind of the land of no slack. We don't accept, we have to accept errors. We're humans. We make errors. But what we do accept, or what we do drive culturally, is thick skin with what we call rank off in a fighter pilot debrief, meaning once we close that door and we talk about how our mission went today, I don't care if you're a colonel, a general, or a lieutenant, we're going to be respectful, but we're going to teach each other, and we're going to, I'm going to call you out and say, General, thanks for flying with me today, but you messed up this, this, and this. If you could fix that tomorrow, we're going to be stronger as a team, and we're going to be more lethal when we go fight the fight tomorrow. And so that has been culturally something that I grew up with, and that, I think, is what defines the Eagle community. That's what defines an Eagle driver, is the ability to have that thick skin, to take that debrief, to understand and internalize it and say, I'm going to go study, I'm going to practice, I'm going to get better, and then I'm going to emerge from that and be more lethal, and we're going to work as a team. And that builds a great deal of camaraderie, that honest feedback. It matters. It makes us better, but it also makes us more of a team together. So the Eagle driver, combined with that machine that's so lethal, with such great long-range detection, identification capability, external missile carriage, and then the redundancy of 2 motors and 2 tails, it's a beast, and we're lucky to have flown it this long. And I think that's why we're so dominant. I think that's why air superiority has worked for so long.
That's awesome. It's great to see those two things come together. And not a lot of times do you get the great product and the great people, but here we do.
We're very lucky.
We are very lucky. And actually, that kind of dovetails into our next question. And this one actually comes in from Dean Ekman, who says, as the current F-15 fleet reaches the end of service, what's the next realistic replacement? And I'm going to actually dovetail that myself and say, how long do we have until we need that replacement? So
I've said this on camera before, and I'll say it again tonight. It's a matter of when, not if, right? The airplanes have to retire. I'm driving an 18-year-old Subaru. It's kind of a piece of junk, and people laugh at me for driving the 18-year-old Subaru. We're flying 36-year-old airplanes, and they're 9G fighters. So at some point they have to retire. You can't keep going, and at some point it's not economical to put another transmission in your car, and at some point it's not economical to continue to rebuild the structures of a 36-year-old airplane. And so we will see this transition. I don't know exactly when, because there's a varying level of age and really structural stress put on the airplanes across the fleet. There's some that are 85s, 86 models. There's some that are older, and where they've been flown, it all matters. The engineers do a great job. They track the G loading and the stress that's put onto each airplane each year, so that they can see which ones are the best, which ones are the worst, that have the most stress, and then manage the fleet that way. I think we'll see a transition within the decade. I think I have a more specific number than that, but I really shouldn't go into it. And we'll see that transition happen. I think Kingsley will be a part of it. As far as the next logical transition, there's been a lot of discussions of fifth-generation fighters. I wish we could rewind the clock and as a nation maybe go and buy more F-22s. I think we needed to back then, and that's part of why we're here past our life expectancy with the Eagle. However, can we build enough F-35s? Do we want to go that route? Does everybody need to have F-35s? I don't know. It's not my call to make. I'd say right now the discussions really are between a new fourth-generation fighter or a newer fourth-generation fighter with all the capabilities that I've talked about already, but some modernized and improved capabilities from what we've lived with, yet now new structures. And, it's like buying the new car, right? I might buy the same Subaru model, but it's 18 years newer, now 36 years newer. So we'll see.
Would that be the F-15X?
So that's been in the news. The F-15X has been in the news, and that's possible. I don't know if that's the direction they'll go. I don't know of any F-16 variants that are really being discussed. There was one article that said we're going to replace all our F-15 units with F-16s, and I haven't really heard much of that. That seemed to – I just don't think that gained traction. So I think right now it's between an F-15X or something like that, a newer fourth-generation fighter or an F-35, but – to be determined. Either way, I've not heard anything other than we're going to be a training unit, we're going to be flying fighters, and everybody's amazed with the capacity we have, the amount of ramp space, infrastructure, and airspace we have, meaning there's been discussion of could you possibly grow, could you have more mission here, and arguably when you have all these leaders come and look, they look around and go, I think you could, and the answer is yes, we could. We just have to see what the decision is with respect to what that future jet will be.
Cool. Have you ever flown a 5th generation jet?
I have not.
You have not?
I've flown the F15 A, B, C, and D. That's the only fighters I've flown. Everything before that was a training airplane. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
So thank you, Dean, for getting that question in. Just like Dean's question, we're going to be asking yours a little bit later in the show. Go ahead and get those in the comments below. So we kind of hinted on this already, and you kind of already answered this, but I'm going to ask it again because we have it listed here. The F-15 coming to the end of its service life, you think maybe within a decade will be transitioned. What does that mean for the future mission of Kingsley Field?
Again, I've heard nothing except positive news that says we're going to still be a training unit and in a fighter. And so I've talked to the people at the base a lot of times to say, I don't know exactly what the future holds, but I'll tell you if it doesn't look bright. I'll be honest with them because I have to. They are nervous about their jobs. They're also nervous about the future of the base, and they want it to succeed just like we all do. And so I try to be as transparent as I can within the rule sets I'm given. As I talked to them, I said, if you ever see me pessimistic, you know that maybe things aren't going well, and I have not been pessimistic. Everything seems to say we're going to have that bright future that I described. I just don't know if it's going to be a 5th generation or a newer 4th generation fighter. But all of the strengths that we have that I've hit enough times with you, the airspace and the infrastructure and the culture, those things are so strong and they're so evident that every time a visitor comes here, they walk away and they get it. So I don't see anything changing from that. And I see, again, as the Air Force grows out to that 386 number and additional 7 fighter squadrons, I see fighter units transitioning to different fighters and staying with that general core mission of being a fighter unit that you can't, again, grow from nothing. It's difficult to do.
Okay. You've alluded this one as well. Our next question is, why is Kingsley Field a great location for an Air Force training facility? And you talked about our people, our airspace, and things like that. And that all just comes together, doesn't it? It
really does. And the public support, I mean, the community support that we have is really unparalleled. In February of last year, we had a big kind of a celebration out at the base. We had just the city had just signed a lease, and the Air Force finally came to the table and signed it. And thanks to the mayor and the city council and all the folks who rallied behind to help us with this, where they signed a new lease for us out to 2095. And when I went down to San Antonio in the last couple weeks before it got signed, I went down there and I was talking to the gal. And, the package is on her desk. It's big file this big. It's a bunch of legal documents. And I said, what does it take to get that signed? It's kind of time. Let's just get that done. And she said, I've never seen a lease that goes this far to the future. She's like, this is 77 years out. She actually looked at me and said, what are you selling out there? And I said, we're not selling anything. We're just part of the community. This base has been part of the basin since the 50s. And people identify fighters overhead as part of Kingsley. I mean, it's part of the town. And so I said, we're very tight-knit. The town and the base are well-connected, and the community support's phenomenal. And she said, well, this is pretty cool. You have the longest lease in the U.S. Air Force. And that's Kingsley Field and Klamath Falls working together to have the longest lease in the Air Force. But again, kind of like having the Secretary of the Air Force here, it's kind of crazy. It's very cool. So that community support is a huge piece too. I mean, when you watch future mission discussions in many communities, that's not the case. And there's folks that maybe come out against future mission, and we just don't see much of that here. And I joke about this a lot, but I joke about it, but I bring it up, and the generals laugh when they're here visiting. But it happens. We have noise compliments, is what we call them. Other wing commanders deal with noise complaints. My gal who works a couple feet away from me, she hits play on the recording every Monday to see what recordings we have in the commander's line. And there was this gal crying on the line the one time, and I went, oh no, something bad happened, and I don't want to have to, I hope we didn't hurt this lady or something she owns. And she was crying, and she actually said, I wish you guys would fly lower and faster. I just saw some of you fly over, and it was awesome. And she's crying, and I said, please save that. That's Klamath Falls. That's our community support. People call and say, please fly lower, please fly faster.
It is known as the sound of freedom for a reason.
Sound of freedom, but not everybody loves it that way, and this town mostly does, and so we're very, very blessed that way.
I've only seen a handful, and most of them live pretty close to the airfield, is the ones that I've personally seen that
Yeah.
don't appreciate it as much. They appreciate you, maybe not the noise you make, but as a general rule, it's very difficult to run into somebody that doesn't like that. They hear that you're downtown over Main Street, and you see two fly together and overhead, and you just stop and you watch, and you look around and there's 30 other people stopping and watching also, because we all appreciate it so much. And then a few moments later there's two more, right? Because everybody's flying together.
We have a guy that stands out at the end of the runway, waves a big old American flag when you're coming into land, which is somewhat distracting, but appreciated.
The line of people watching night flights.
I
off
was driving in
Washburn.
today. We had a couple guys and their kids were out there with their pickup trucks right out the watching the takeoffs from the end of the runway, and it's just that community support cannot be overstated. When we talk about the future of Kingsley and the future of our mission, the community support matters so much, not only from the leadership level, but from the people of the community, and the support that we feel. It helps with our recruiting. It helps with our retention. People feel that they're respected. They also feel like they're welcome here, and so that helps us. That's how we get those guys who want to come back here from the Navy, who were stationed in Japan, to say, I want to choose Klamath Falls because that's a unique and special place, and it truly is. We're very lucky.
So what can the community do to help ensure the 173rd stays put?
Keep that up. Keep the community support up. It's unbelievable. Simply put, I don't have anything. There's no ask. There's no task. There's nothing that incrementally we need to do. There's no checklist. I think it's already there. I think the ingredients are already there, and we appreciate it.
Very well. Thank you, Colonel. Guys, we're going to actually take a break here in just a moment, but before we do, quick reminder, get your questions in. Somebody's going to come away with a payday rewards card filled with $25. We'll be right back with more from Colonel Smith.
Fuel, refreshment, convenience, community, rewards. Fastbreak convenience stores with 7 basin locations at Madison Chevron, Homedale Fastbreak, Merrill Mobile, 97 Chevron, McDowell Fuel Good, Washburn Chevron, and Bly Fuel Good. Fastbreak, convenience, community, service.
Slow down.
Slow down and move over.
And move over.
When you see lights,
Vests.
Or reflectors.
Please, give us some room. Slow down and move over.
when you need us.
We've got your back.
Do you have ours?
You got our back?
You got ours?
You got our back?
Please, slow down.
And move over.
You can have your car taken to the shop of your choice. So my friend had her car taken to Excel Auto Body because she heard about their reputation for excellent work. They even gave her a written warranty that's good for as long as she owns that car. So Excel Auto Body is a very smart choice.
Hi, I'm Rorik, owner of Excel Auto Body. No matter if the damage is minor or major, you'll want to choose us now. So if you are ever in an accident, you'll be ready. And remember, it's your choice what body shop you go to. Choose Excel Auto Body. It's your car, our reputation.
Hi friends, Brian Gailey here, Klamath Falls News. Welcome back to Ask Klamath, presented by Fastbreak. Joining us today is Colonel Jeff Smith, the commander of the 173rd Fighter Wing. We've been asking all sorts of questions. If you've coming in kind of late, you will be able to replay this and see all those things as well. If you've got some questions for Colonel Smith, and I do see some in here already, but if you've got some questions for him, get those in the comments below, because we're going to be asking your questions here in just a couple minutes. But before we do, this section is brought to you by Shasta Family Dental. Dr. Mindy Brown has created a team of individuals that hold high value in family, community, honesty, integrity, and compassion. Sounds kind of like your airmen out there. They provide quality, compassionate dental care through trust, respect of their patients. They care for you and the community. Shasta Family Dental is located across from the City PD on Shasta Way. Learn more at shastafamilydental.com or call them at 541-884-5474. So, Colonel, what's on your mind?
So apparently this is called the soapbox section, which is for me. It should be pretty quick. Really, at first I'd like to say thank you to our deployed airmen. We have 3 folks that are overseas right now, and I doubt that they're watching. I hope that they're not. I hope they're doing better things. But they're for them and for their families and the sacrifice to not be here for Thanksgiving and again not to be here for Christmas, it matters, right? And so our wing and most of our mission is training F15 pilots. So we do that in garrison. We do it here at home station, which means we're not on the road all the time. But we do have what we call agile combat support folks who deploy on rotational basis. And we do, like I said, have 3 folks out and about right now and a ton of people that are always churning through and into the deployment cycle and then back out. So I wish them well. Godspeed getting home safely. And I look to their families and say thank you for your sacrifice and your service as we go through the Thanksgiving and then the Christmas season. It's difficult to obviously not have our dads and our moms and our husbands and wives home with us through the holidays. So thank you. To all of our folks at the base, thanks for all you do every day. I say it to you in emails too often, sadly, and not as much face-to-face, but thanks to you for your service. Thanks to you for all you do for America's air superiority. America's air superiority starts here. We are the foundation of it, and so every person on that base touches it in some form or fashion. And thank you. It matters. It truly matters for the nation. And then finally, thank you to the community leaders and to the community. We just talked about the community support, right? The general support of the base and the fact that. When visitors come here, I say, hey, when you go to lunch, you're going to get thanked for your service a lot. People are going to come up and shake your hand, and they come back from lunch and they go, yeah, you're not kidding. This is a different feel in this town. Well, thank you to the community, but also thank you to the community leaders. There's so many partners that we work with, and when the secretary was here, we had a chance to meet with her and with them to talk about some of the things that she's focused on with taking care of airmen and families across the nation and how this community can partner and help us to meet those needs. And there's so many people working behind the scenes to do those and to accomplish some of those things. That matters for the future of the base. It also matters for our airmen now, and it truly is appreciated by the U.S. Air Force and by me. So thank you. And to you, thank you for having me. Thanks for, just
You're
before
welcome. Glad to have you
Thanksgiving.
here.
Thanks for the chance to be here, and we will figure out a way to remedy this. So we have a representation of Kingsley behind you on the wall. I still think the eagle counts. The fact that we have an eagle there matters.
Right over my shoulder.
But we
Right
will
there.
we'll get a different type of eagle there so that we're represented
Very
behind
cool. For those of you checking in, we had a conversation off camera about how the 173rd does not have a representation in our studio just yet. So I was thinking maybe a patch or something like that, and I think the Colonel has much bigger plans. So
Yeah.
thank you.
We'll figure something out.
We'll figure something out. Now, you actually just mentioned something about a couple of guys being deployed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's spin back around to that for just a second. With the wildfires we've been having and the National Guard troops and our Air Guard troops being called up to assist with wildfires, how does that affect the mission at Kingsley?
Well, it's part of our mission at Kingsley, right? So we have multiple mission sets. We have, I call it 3 main mission sets. We have a federal home game, so that's our in-garrison student training. We're training F-15 pilots for active and guard. We have a federal away game, which is the deployments overseas, which I was just alluding to, and the 3 airmen that are overseas right now supporting the nation. And finally, we have a state mission. We have and that's the unique part about the Air National Guard is that in peacetime, we work in the chain of command to the governor of Oregon. And so when there's a need, a crisis, if you will, we're called and we need to be prepared. And one of the mottos that we follow in the Oregon Guard is always ready, always there. And so when the fires happen, we deploy our airmen and they get ready, they get trained, they get their new equipment, and they go. The beautiful thing about the Guard is we also have the citizen soldier concept. So some of the members that go and fight the fires are not full-time at the base, and they're part-timers who are working in the civil sector who thank you to their employers who let them go and serve, but they put on the uniform, they go, they fight the fires, and then they go back to their civil jobs. There's also the people that we do cut loose from the full-time on the flight line mission or anywhere else across the base, and they go put that different uniform on and they go support again and fight the fires. When that happens, sometimes we have part-timers that can come and backfill them on the base, and sometimes we can't. And when we run out of people, when we run out of possibilities, then sometimes our mission decrements slightly. And so instead of flying our 22 or more lines a day, maybe we back off to 18 or 14 for a few days. But it's important that we answer that call when it comes to make sure that, again, we take care of our state. This is where we live. This is our state. We don't want it to be on fire any more than you do. We don't like the smoke any more than you do. And so if we have a chance and the opportunity to help with that and still meet enough of our federal mission to keep a balance, we try to do that. And most of our folks are very proud and happy to serve and pleased to be able to help in both those capacities. on a daily basis.
You mentioned smoke from forest fires. Does that actually add an element for the training, or is that hinder?
When the smoke's very thick, it impacts our training, and it just like bad weather would, in that you have instrument approach requirements and a certain amount of visibility you need to be able to take off and land safely. And our students are new, so they have more stringent requirements on them than our instructor pilots. So there has been some impact, but not dramatic. We could typically mitigate that with our 2-seat models that we still have, where we put the old guys with the gray hair in the back seat. I wasn't
going to say anything about gray hair.
Yeah. And we make sure then that the folks in the front seat are safe while we come back and shoot those approaches in the smoke. But we prefer clear air like everybody else.
Very well.
Yeah.
Good. Well, let's take a look and see what kind of questions we have. I know we've got several in here. Douglas Warner is watching, says, and we've just said this, thank you for your service. I'm sure you, like you said, your airmen and yourself probably run into that all the time. Off camera over here, Sergeant Shara, do you run into that all the time as well? She's nodding her head and says yes. So it's definitely, it's hard to like go out to lunch and not run into an airman and like 4 or 5 people walk up to and say thank you. Your mom is watching.
Hi, Mom.
Proud parents from Baltimore. Let's see, taking a look here. Douglas wants to fly in the back seat. How do you guys do that anymore? Can somebody do that? Is that for dignitaries only? Do you have to be Secretary Wilson?
There's a lot of rules, and it's mostly dignitaries. And I know that there's been banter back and forth between my mom, who has said she has first dibs on any of these strange rules and loopholes. That there are no strange loopholes, Mom. I don't think I can get you in an F-15, so I'm sorry. I probably can't get the gentleman in an F-15 ride either.
That's okay. Rourke Ponce has asked, what can the community do? We actually touched on that just a moment ago, but if somebody's tuning in late, again, one more time, what can the community do to help support the base?
The community support is phenomenal. How much you demonstrate to us that we're part of the community and that you wrap your arms around us. It matters, and it shows, and everybody feels it when they come to visit. So that's awesome. We talked briefly about the fact that the community leadership is working on certain things that can help make us a more solid candidate for future basing, future mission, and future jets. And that's the things that we saw the other night with the Secretary of the Air Force, which was affordable rental housing that can take pets, by the way. People have pets when they move here from the active duty. And
we've got 4 of our own.
And so,
and I'm not active duty. It's just hard anyway.
I know. And there's a lot of people that are working on the housing discussion. The healthcare is coming together beautifully. There's a lot of people partnering to bring in more providers and to increase the amount of primary care that's available. Child care is something we're looking at as well, as we have these younger airmen and families that maybe have a kid or two that are not at school age yet, but then maybe mom and dad both work or both work at the base, and they have to figure that out. There's an example sitting there off camera as well. So, that child care. So those 3 things, they're all being worked by the community leaders, and that matters. So that's it. The licensure and reciprocity we talked to as well, and that's being worked by some of the state legislatures. They're aware, and they were legislators, not legislatures. They're working on it, and they're aware. So a lot of things in work, a lot of support. Everybody recognizes that these are important things for the future, and we're glad that everybody cares that we're part of the future of the base, and we want to be here.
Very good. A couple of times we've referenced Secretary Wilson's press conference that she had. We're actually going to link that in the description as this becomes available for rewatch, so that you can follow along with that as well and listen to what she had to say about the licensure. Looking over here again, Douglas Warner's asking, let's go back. My wife actually says, I love hearing the jets in our skies. I feel safe, and thank you all for your service. She's telling everybody. Douglas Warner, again, asks, when did the Army Air Corps become the Air Force?
1947. And we were talking about this just a few minutes ago. If you remember the Screaming Eagle, the airplane we had painted up like an eagle a couple years ago, and it was there for Century Eagle, and Bedroom Gallery had it painted on the windows downtown. It was all over the place, and there's models that are out in the store. If you go to Hobby Lobby, you'll see the model of the Screaming Eagle from Klamath Falls, Oregon, on the shelves. It's pretty cool. And what was interesting about that was celebrating the 75th anniversary of the Oregon Air National Guard. And if you do the math off of 2016 and you back it up, that says that the Oregon Air National Guard existed in 1941, yet the Air Force itself didn't pull away from the Army until 1947 after the war. So we were actually 6 years older than the actual Air Force when we separated from the Army Air Corps.
Awesome. Little piece of trivia there.
It's kind of neat that I've been in the room with the Chief of Staff of the Air Force and the Secretary, and they continue to talk about we've been breaking barriers since 1947. That's one of the mottos. And it seems like back then they said that the Air Force was culturally so different that we were not risk takers, but it was just a different domain that we were fighting in. It wasn't a linear on the ground, let's go take the hill. It was we're going to go over the hill or around the hill in an airplane. And it was such a different way of thinking about the battle space that's why that separation happened. It was we worked very well together, and now we fight and work together so much in a joint environment that we're cooperating and planning together. But the way we fight is so different, and the way we think is structurally different, and that's why the two services became distinct.
Cool. Travis Davis actually has a great question here. Could the inability of LMT, the actual the airfield, right, the call sign, keep a commercial airline hurt the efforts to keep Kingsley Field viable? In other words, is the commercial passenger air service a big deal to have or not have for your airmen?
It's a big deal, and we are thankful for the efforts that the congressional delegations have made, along with the city leadership in the county, and a lot of civic partners are coming to the table to try and figure out solutions for this. It matters, and it would help. We have a lot of folks who travel in here for training, and then we have a lot of folks that we send out for training. I'm on the road a fair amount, and it's nice to be able to take off and land from your hometown and have those extra nights with your family and be home, and not have to drive the mountain passes, frankly, in the winter. So from a safety standpoint, we like it as well. It's not a deal breaker, though. I don't see the future of the base in jeopardy due to that lack of air service. Again, I applaud all the efforts that John Barcelou and Nathan and the whole team they're working so well together to try and figure this out. But if it doesn't come together, I don't see that will derail any of our training opportunities for the base based on all the good things that we have going on.
Very good. Good to hear. And I hear a lot of rumors regarding that, so I'm glad that you're able to answer that question and kind of clear some of that air. Brandon Christopher Rust is asking a question. Brandon, I'm not surprised to see you ask a question like this. Colonel, do you like making rookies puke? That's what Brandon's asking.
Actually, every time I've taken somebody flying, I've purposely tried not to make them puke. So when you have somebody in the back seat and it's their incentive ride, it's to thank them for how well they've worked and all the great things they've done on the base. For me, it's the ride's for them. I'm not going to go out there and crush them if they don't want it. I've had people that were throwing up by the time we took off. I've had people that were cheering while we took off, and they cheered the entire time while I was straining against the G's, and I was miserable. They were cheering in the back, and then we came back and landed, and they were still cheering, and I was still sweating from the G's. So there's a wide range of people out there. Some folks that have never experienced it will love it. Some people that have never experienced it will hate it from the moment you start the engines. It's physiologically stressing to people, and it's different, and so that new environment is challenging. But no, I don't try to make people sick. I prefer them to get out of the airplane smiling and having had a good experience.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So that probably does leave a better impression on some people, though, so you don't leave them sick going, right? Could be a negative thing.
Yeah.
All right. So not seeing any more questions. We've got some great ones in here, and thank you guys for getting those in. Now, off camera, we were discussing, normally our guest gets to pick the winner of our Fastbreak card, but due to your position, we're not able to do that today, right? So I'm actually going to pick, if that's okay with you.
It's great.
Okay. So looking down this list, here's a comment here I missed. Gloria Griffin says, "What an astounding example for our youth of today." Not sure at what point in our conversation that popped up, but
it's very nice. We're picking some Academy cadets for appointment to the Army and Navy and Air Force in the next week or two, and I'm part of that too. So it's exciting stuff we get to do. We're very blessed, very lucky.
Oh, I do see another one here that I overlooked. Stacy Neely, cool question here. Is there any plans for another custom paint job on an F-15?
Yes, our flagship is sadly gray right now. It does not look like the 75th bird. I think you could see another big eagle maybe in the 100th anniversary, so it'll be a while, right? But our flagship right now is gray because, frankly, we have a paint booth that's broken, and we're getting that fixed. And until that gets fixed, we can't really paint our airplanes.
Do you still have the desert camo one out there too?
It's actually at Robbins where they do our depot overhaul maintenance, and when it comes back, it'll be gray also.
It'll be gray also.
We will be a fleet of all gray eagles, which we still love them, and they're harder to see when you're fighting when they're actually all gray. You can see the screaming eagle farther, and you can see the brown eagle when it was farther. So
very good.
Yeah.
All right. So, here's one more just popped in. I don't see the whole question. Adrian Mateos says, how can local youth apply the expectation of the 173rd Airmen being accountable, credible? And I'm not seeing the whole question.
So how can they apply being humble, approachable, credible, and accountable is probably what he meant to say.
There you go.
We talk a lot about that. None of us are perfect, and I'm a perfect example of that, right? Every day we're human, so we're fallible.
Perfectly imperfect.
Yeah, we're fallible. We screw up. What I talk about, though, in the purest sense, if you can be humble, approachable, credible, and accountable in your whole life, you're going to be better for it. Whether it's as a dad, whether it's as a commander, whether it's as an airman and a leader and a follower, those things matter. And so he's saying, how do you apply those principles? You can apply them in life everywhere. I don't know how much time I have for this. I could go for an hour on that. Being humble, as I've talked to my airmen, it's a constant. You should try to be humble when you're young, and you can carry that through your entire life. Humility is something that you should hold constant throughout the different positions as best you can, and no matter what you're doing in life. Being approachable is, again, one of those things that people have or they don't. People, it's not that you're born with it or you're not. You can learn it, but it's something that should stay constant through your career. And through your life as you're growing up. When we talk about being credible, this is the one that I talked to Henley football team once. I talked to the Triad football team about it a little bit, and I'll say to you as well. Being credible changes through your life, and the reason it changes is because what you're doing is changing. When I was a lieutenant, I was paid to be the absolute best pilot and tactician I possibly could be, and that lasted until I was a captain. And there was a certain point at which it transitioned, and I had to be credible as a leader. In our families, you might be striving to be credible as a new husband. But eventually maybe you have a kid and now you're trying to be credible as a dad. And so we have all these things that you're trying to be credible at, but they change as you grow older and your position and your responsibilities change. And so that's the one of all these that really changes. And finally, accountable. Everybody assumes I'm going to say we need to hold each other accountable and it needs to be a hard thing. But really what I'm saying is we need to hold ourselves accountable. We need to understand that other people watch us and watch our example. And that's what I said to the Henley football team. That's one of the things that their team was trying to focus on this year was a character for the team was as important as their victory and their scores at the end of the day. That we need people to look at us and say, I want to be like you. I want to look up to you and emulate and follow you. And so being accountable and understanding that other people are watching matters. So, as you're growing up, as you're going through whatever stage of life you're going through, those four things, if you can strive to meet them, even when you stumble and fall, pick yourself back up and try to do better the next day at whatever you stumbled with, those things make us all better in all facets of our lives. So, Adrian, you're a good one, and thanks for asking that and put me on the spot to go into my normal discussion.
Well, looking at these comments, the one that actually sticks out to me to pick for our winner today is actually Travis Davis, who asked about the commercial airline. I think that's an awesome question, and that's a great little rumor killer, too, that you've been able to put out there, that, yes, it's helpful, but it's not necessary.
Yeah,
right?
It won't shut us down.
All right. So, Travis, I'm going to reach out to you. You are going to get our payday rewards card today loaded with $25 by our friends over at Fastbreak. So, anything else, Colonel?
No, I'm great.
All right. Well, we are actually a little over time today, which is just cool because I was going to get this guy as much time as he wanted. And I do thank you again. Once again, thank you for your service. Thank you for being on our show as our guest here as Ask Klamath, presented by Fastbreak. Congrats to our winner. I'm going to be reaching out to you, Travis. Ask Klamath is a production of Klamath Falls News. It's hosted by myself, Brian Gailey. Off camera is our show producer monitoring audio and switching the cameras, Damian Johnson. Hi, Damian. Thank you for everything that you do as well. I couldn't do this show without him. If you did not catch the entire live broadcast, don't worry, because as soon as Facebook does all its magic, you'll be able to rewatch this anytime on Facebook, as well as AskKlamath.com. If you've been entertained, you've learned something, this guy, open your mind to something new. Maybe you're a young fella and you want to get in and you want to fly yourself because of this. Give the show a like, share, comment, everything. If somebody wants to know more about what you guys do, your mission, Kingsley, how could somebody learn more?
Well, if you Google the wing, you'll find a website, and we have an app that you can download, and you can find our recruiters. And those recruiters are a great resource to at least see the different options of career fields that we have out there, and then to meet people and find out what fits for the members. And the legislature and the governor signed a 100% tuition assistance bill. That's a little shout out, right? That says they'll pay for your entire school, your entire college, for any of the state schools in Oregon, and that's been a huge deal. And when you think about graduating college without any student loans or student debt, it's a big deal. So
it is a big deal.
Our recruiters can help you through all of that, and they can find you a place where you can get through that transition of being 18 to 22, learn some things, and get some skills that'll help you for life. And we'd love to have you on the team.
Awesome. Well, guys, this is it for this show. Our next episode will be next Wednesday when Josh White from Fastbreak actually gets to come on the show and talk to us about what's going on over there. On behalf of my guest, Colonel Smith, thank you for being here. I'm Brian Gailey. We'll see you around the basin.